everyone, and welcome to Dragons, Gazelles, and Unicorns podcast. I'm Rosemary Truman, founder and CEO of the Center for Advanced Innovation and Ignite Social Impact. And I'm here to welcome Kory Bailey on the podcast. He leads UpSurge in Baltimore, and it's a fantastic organization that helps entrepreneurs really drive and advance their companies. He has an incredible and inspirational background, and I'm extremely excited to welcome him on the podcast and very grateful. So Kory, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
Rosemary, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
You have such an incredible and inspirational background, as I mentioned before. I would love to have you give the listeners a little bit of an overview of your background and your journey.
Yeah, sure. I'll sort of start from the beginning and then make it relevant to what we're doing with UpSurge now. So I'm originally from Durham, North Carolina. So I grew up in Tobacco Road in the 80s and 90s. And I always tell people that was the rise of Duke Carolina basketball and the fall of the tobacco industry. So I got to watch my hometown sort of struggle through some economic failures and hardships as tobacco and textiles faded away, and fortunately reinvent itself over the last 20 years with the advancement of technology and their innovation economy. So that's sort of my roots, and I matriculated through the University of North Carolina. All along, my two biggest passions were always technology and sports. So there's always a sort of a great overlap there in the stories. Was fortunate enough to play football at Carolina for a few years after school with the New York Jets and a team in Edmonton called the Edmonton Eskimos. And when my professional career was over, was fortunate to get into the health club industry, some ventures into entrepreneurship with restaurant ownership, bar ownership, and all along sort of leaning into and adopting technologies that would help those businesses thrive. I got my direct introduction and entry into technology in 2013-14 in Indianapolis, Indiana. After the acquisition of ExactTarget by Salesforce, there was a lot of startup activity in the ecosystem there. And so I was working for a larger tech company called Blackbaud, which is, for lack of a better explanation, sort of the Apple for nonprofits. Anything that's donor management, fundraising, nonprofit tech related, Blackbaud has products and services for that. But then was poached by a high alpha venture company. Scott Dorsey and his team at High Alpha had a number of fast growing B2B SaaS companies. I was fortunate to plug in with one of them, Sigster. We had a meteoric rise. We just grew month over month, year over year. But in that time, I noticed a trend, and there wasn't a lot of representation amongst the startup community in Indianapolis. So I was always questioning, how do we get more diversity in the startup space? How do we get more diversity in tech? And as I sort of gained experience in different ecosystems, whether that be Atlanta, Chicago, New York, Raleigh, Durham, just different markets, you start to understand what is the secret sauce and what are the things that make a really successful and thriving ecosystem. Fast forward to summer of 2018, I was fortunate enough to move here with my family. My ex-wife at the time was brought here by a biotech company to lead their marketing and commercialization strategy. Big shout out to them. She's now the CEO at PGDX, and they just announced an acquisition by LabCorp. So big win for the ecosystem, big win for our family. But was introduced to UpSurge early last year as an effort to really push Baltimore into the top tier cities for a tech hub. So, but to do so from a lens of equity. So really excited to be a part of that vision and that movement. And we've made some tremendous progress in the ecosystem in 2021 and are really, really well positioned to get some real activity and real successes and wins for the ecosystem in 2022.
So what are your, so what is the lens of equity?
The lens of equity is sort of a three-part strategy. One, we really want to celebrate the companies, no matter who they're founded by, who they're led by, that lean into diversity as a strength and an economic advantage for their growth. And we mean diversity in perspectives, ideas, leadership, hopefully cap tables eventually. We really want to see diversity in the Baltimore ecosystem as the winning edge for how we advance technology and companies. Number two, we really want to champion and support underestimated founders. So anyone who's received less than 5% of venture capital traditionally, we think that there is no monopoly on great ideas, just the opportunity and access to get those ideas to market. So we really want to lean into women, people of color, the LGBTQ community, veterans, differently abled. We want founders to look and feel a little bit more like a broad stroke section of society than has traditionally been in the past. And finally, any science, technology, or company that is advancing equity in the world, reducing some type of societal barrier, or broadening access for disadvantaged groups, we want to lean into the companies that are really, for lack of a better word, trying to make the world a better place.
You're connecting opportunity with talent.
Yep.
Because opportunity is not evenly distributed, right?
It is not. Access and opportunity are currently not evenly distributed, but we believe talent certainly is. So we need to match that talent with opportunity, as you said. Very
good. I applaud you for what you're doing in UpSurge. It's a fantastic organization.
Thank you.
We actually, with our accelerator program, have about 60 to 70% of our founders that are the underestimated, and 100% of our companies, the 350 we've launched, are in the same camp as what you outlined. So we are very, very aligned, very excited about what you're doing. And Baltimore is a fantastic place to do it. So what are the metrics that you have? I mean, you said you wanted to, there were two things you mentioned. You mentioned that there are lots of things. I have like a list of fantastic things that you've mentioned already. But you said the lens of equity, and you said real successes. And I was wondering if you have some targets that you're trying to hit.
Yeah, absolutely. So our first year, we really leaned into community building, sort of culture shifting. So a lot of our activity was just around engagement and participation. How well received was the Equitech vision? And that's some language that we're using to sort of describe that diversity as a strength, that championing of underestimated founders and the companies that are really advancing equity in the world. So how well received is that vision? And I can tell you, from the community level, community organization level, all the way up to sort of local and state government, a lot of people are hungry for this type of community, this type of connectivity, and this type of vision for Baltimore. So a lot of our early successes we measured on activity, engagement, and community building. This year, we'll shift that more towards services that we can provide for companies and founders, really founder-focused, investor-focused. How can we shift culture and sort of behaviors and thought processes for the investment community and who they invest in? How can we lean into supporting founders, both as a city, state, and at the community level? And there's a lot of different sort of pilots and programs that we'll put in place, and shed the ones that aren't working, really lean into the ones that are. But year one was about community building and engagement. Year two is going to be about leaning into the services that we can provide for founders and company growth, and sort of measuring how far or broadly we can get citywide engagement in supporting these founders and the innovation economy.
Well, we want to help you with that.
Absolutely. Well, welcome all help.
Yes, yes. So on Monday, we have our first demo day for Ignite Social Impact. It is going to be hosted by the Center for Advanced Innovation. So anyone who's listening can certainly tune in, write me an email. But and your companies, hopefully Silton will be participating.
That'd be awesome.
Who's participating? So any other companies you think could benefit from it? We have about 270 investors that are going to be coming in from all around the world. They're interesting investors too, and like we'd like to get these investors to come in to see what you're doing at UpSurge and the companies that you're growing and advancing. We have a very interesting set of investors. We have some from the yachting community because there's a lot of sustainability focus there. So there'll be some really interesting opportunities there. 1:30 Eastern time on Monday. So and I hope you're coming.
I would love to. Just check my schedule, and if it's free, I'm going to be there.
Okay,
especially if some Zimbali and Silton and their team are presenting. Big fans of theirs. We had a pitch with them. I think it was 2 days ago, and they're ready. So it's really exciting. Awesome.
I just wanted to go into a couple more of the items that you mentioned. Two things in particular: community building and culture shifting. I wanted to dig into a little bit more about what you consider and what advice you could give for community building. And what's really interesting is that the term community is not used too often. People use the term ecosystem, and it's a little bit less. It's more harsh. Community building is when you're really, cultivating and galvanizing people to come together in a different way. And I think the community building and the culture shifting, those two items you mentioned go together very nicely. And I'd love to learn more about how you've done that, and how do you define it in more granular terms, and then how did you do it? Yeah,
that's a great question. And I think the two are sort of bound together, right? Community building and culture shifting. Whenever you're able to build community, that's when you're able to move the needle and sort of shift mindsets, shift behavior, shift activities towards a common goal. I just think in general, as humans, we have, one of our biggest downfalls is that we tend to categorize ourselves and put ourselves in different, different boxes and different bubbles. But when you're able to sort of build community and have people come together over shared experiences or shared vision or shared goals, that's when you can really see the magic happen in moving anything forward, right? Any movement that you want to move forward, if you're able to build community and have that movement grow, it requires some shared focus and some shared activity. And what we've seen is there's just a real hunger for connectivity throughout Baltimore and the surrounding area. A desire for more collaboration, more convening, more communication, that will then lead to some of the behaviors and activities that generate some of those small wins, and then small wins sort of beget big wins. So that's some of the velocity that we've tried to lean into. We had a really amazing project over the last summer called our UpSurge Teams process, where we brought together over 200 people from Baltimore that signed up for different activity focuses, different sector focuses, everything from the traditional sort of life sciences, cyber, fintech, ed tech sort of verticals, all the way to things like inclusive entrepreneurship and talent development and company attraction, talent attraction. And so we had really smart people throughout Baltimore sort of plugging in together to generate some priorities for us. And I say us, I mean the Baltimore tech community, not UpSurge. What priorities do we need to generate some quick wins? The second time frame we really looked at was systems change efforts, things that might take 3 to 5 years. And then what's that 10-year moonshot? Like, we wanted people to have big sort of hairy, audacious goals as well for the ecosystem. And it generated over 65 recommendations that we've been leaning into over the past few months coming out of that process. But that was a really galvanizing moment to see, and it was done virtually, right? So we had over 200 people on squares, introducing themselves, getting to know one another, talking about their experience, breaking out into smaller groups and leaning into some of these challenges that we're trying to solve. And it was just great. It was great, first and foremost, to just get to know everyone that's out there. That's checkbox number one. Who's out there? What do they do? How can they help? And then we started to lean into sort of how we can convene and collaborate towards some of these goals. Another thing that really happened organically was our Equitech Tuesdays. Starting in late May, early June, a small group of founders would meet me at one of the local restaurants, Alma Cocina, and we would talk about the future of Baltimore and the future of Baltimore's tech community. Then investors started to show up. Then accelerator managers and incubator managing directors started to show up. And then younger tech talent coming out of the universities started to show up. And it's become a really, really great weekly reminder that people want community, they want connection, and they want to be able to support one another. So it's twofold. One, you have to really lean into the desire to pull people together and generate community-driven ideas. And two, you have to lean into the things that you can see that people are hungry for. And for us, that was convening and connectivity. Now we intend to sort of make some of those a little bit better, maybe offer some programming or some resources connected to those. But right now, we're really leaning into the community building aspect of bringing this tech community together.
I'm totally stealing that Tuesday thing.
Please do, and we want more of them.
I'll do mine on Thursday, so.
What we'll find, and what I've experienced in other ecosystems and communities, is that when you hit critical mass, there's multiple things throughout the week that are specific to what people are working on or what they're engaging in. I love the nights where someone's holding a fireside chat, and we also have our Equitech Tuesday, and I get to bounce from one to the other, or I get to say, hey, you host Equitech Tuesday this evening, I'm going to go do the fireside chat up at Fast Forward at Johns Hopkins. That's when we know we'll hit critical mass, is when there are multiple events happening throughout the week that are really engaging and really impactful that people want to participate in.
That's awesome. It's fantastic. I just love what you're doing. Out of the 65 ideas, I'm curious about which ones are you going to implement?
There's a couple that are already implemented or underway. The most notable was a common recommendation throughout multiple teams was to have a single source of truth for resources, talent, job opportunities. So a portal for the Baltimore tech community. And I am more than thrilled to let you know that we are soft launching Be More Tech Connect next week in partnership with. Could
you say it one more time, please?
It's called Be More Tech Connect. The URL is baltimore.tech, really easy to remember. And in partnership with Fearless, which is one of our most notable and celebrated, Black founder companies here in Baltimore, that really leans into community and ecosystem building as part of their charge. In partnership with UpSurge and Fearless, and powered by EcoMap, which is also a Baltimore-based company and one of the 12 companies participating in the Techstars Equitech Accelerator. So we're really excited to introduce that broadly to the public after we've soft launched it to our ecosystem partners. So that's number one. Number two is a group that we've been convening over talent development and pathways, everywhere from sort of youth at middle school level all the way up into adulthood. We're bringing all of these organizations together to map out clear on-ramps into the knowledge economy for more Baltimoreans. So There's a number of things that you know we're working on, and those two are probably my favorite projects that are either close to the finish line or underway for us to introduce to the Baltimore tech community.
Okay. So just to reiterate, baltimore.tech is the website.
That is the website for Be More Tech Connect.
And the group talent development and Oma Cocina on Tuesdays.
Yep. Got it.
What time is it?
6 to 8 p.m. You know, there's on average right now anywhere from 25 to 30 folks that show up per week. It is a great cross section. This past week we had leaders of you know, downtown organizations. We had state delegates, founders, investors, folks running accelerators and incubators. You know, any given week you'll find students, you know, grad students or PhD students, folks in student entrepreneur programs, private equity folks. Like it really is. And then even surprisingly, some of the Baltimore creative community will come and experience some of that energy as well. I think it's wonderful that we have so many thriving, talented communities in Baltimore, and the desire for them to overlap, intersect, and connect is high as well. So we've got really talented folks from across Baltimore meeting every Tuesday night, having great conversations with each other and really generating some great energy for the entire ecosystem and city.
You know, Kory, we had a challenge. You know, we launched these companies through challenge model. And one of our most recent challenges was called the Scale Challenge. Supply chain logistics enterprises was what scale meant. And it was supported by the Walton family. And Alice Walton was the one who approved the challenge. And it was very interesting because we require a multidisciplinary team when we actually put together these startups. And one thing that Alice did was she really wanted artists on every single team. So we injected artists in every single startup. And we found that the startups that had the most engagement from the artists were won. They, you know, because it's a challenge model. So they won more often than the ones who did not. Like if the artist was just a advisor or something like that. So, that intersection, that cross-disciplinary view and collision, if you will, of these disciplines is extremely important. And you know, I find that artists they're unconstrained thinking. So you have engineers who usually have constrained thinking, and then the fact that you're injecting youth, and I'm going to have to come back to you. There's a group that is cultivating entrepreneurship in the youth community. It's across the United States, but it could be something that could be useful for you. I can't think of the name of it right now, but I'll come back to you with that. But also, you know, when you have people who don't have as much experience, sometimes they will just say, well, what about this? You know,
yeah,
unconstrained thinking, and then, you know, someone with more experience might say, oh, that's impossible, but you know, why not try it?
Nothing is impossible, someone once said, right? But I agree with you. You know, we often sort of talk about diversity in terms of gender or race or sexual orientation, but diversity is so much more broad than that. If you think about the diversity of perspectives, experiences, you know, age and you know, talent, what you know, God-given and nurtured talents that people have, it's important to account for that. So when you introduce art or artists or creatives into that process, like you said, you get unconstrained thinking. You don't have the framework of tech or corporate America keeping you within certain boundaries. So your ideas become fresh and new and interesting, which is a perfect parallel to entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is people that are trying to solve challenges and problems, and find solutions for things to make things easier, better, or more accessible for folks. So there is a natural sort of marriage between the creative community and the entrepreneurship community that people should really lean into much more often. We're really fortunate to have MICA, one of the top art and design schools in the country right here in Baltimore, and a wonderfully thriving creative community. We have photographers that are Under Armour sponsored, personalities. We have some of the best authors in the world right now coming out of Baltimore, some of the best art and artists in the world coming out of Baltimore. So we should really lean into that as a strength, connect that with our entrepreneurship and startup community, and see what happens. I mean, there is more benefit than not to overlapping and engaging both communities. And I'm just excited. We're at a time in Baltimore where all of that is possible, where the hunger for it is there, and all it's going to take is for organizations like UpSurge and like other entrepreneurial support organizations and the founders and their companies themselves to really lean into that, and support one another as we grow.
You have another company. I have to tell you about it. It's called shoot, I'm looking for the name of it. It's the one of the most famous sculpture companies that exists in Baltimore.
Okay.
It's fantastic. I've never seen some sculptures like this. Never. It's called the Large Art Company.
Yeah, I'll have to find that.
The Large Art Company. I mean, this guy, I've never seen sculptures like, they're huge, giant sculptures that are, he ships them all around the world. But I'm just saying that, yeah, you have a lot of,
yeah, there's just a lot of great things happening in Baltimore. And to your point about, connecting the youth with entrepreneurship, I think there is a desire for entrepreneurship to scale down into high school and even middle school. There's a great program here called Innovators of Progress, run by Marcus Proctor. They recently announced a partnership with Conscious Venture Lab, which is one of the well-known sort of conscious capital accelerators. Yep, Cherry, yep. So I'm excited for that recognition that entrepreneurship can go even further down into youth. Those ideas are fresh, those perspectives are fresh, and can lead to, sort of really fantastic and scalable ideas and companies in the future. So it's all happening. We just have to find those examples and see how they work and poke holes in them, make them better, and continue to scale the good ideas.
Very good. Yeah. So, so obviously we're still in this pandemic. We've got the Omicron variant. The hospitals are overwhelmed. Shifting gears a little bit here. What do you see the silver linings are for the entrepreneurs?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. One is, anytime that you have a pandemic, there is an opportunity to reimagine what the future is going to look like. And all across the country, all across the world, people are behaving differently. They're expecting different things. The idea of where you need to be to work is shifting. There was a statistic that recently came to light through LinkedIn analytics. I think at the beginning of 2019, 1 in 67 people worked remotely. And the beginning of 2021, 1 in 7 worked remotely. So the idea of where you work and where you live matters, right? We can think about sort of second tier cities, more livable, more affordable, more access to different parts of the country. And Baltimore is really well positioned, as sort of the last remaining affordable East Coast city, for us to attract young people and talent and really grow from within the number of tech workers and entrepreneurs and startups that we can generate and attract to our ecosystem. A lot of fantastic, sort of cities that are sort of reinventing themselves and saying, live here, work here, play here, we have it all for you, and incentivizing people to do so and building communities to support that. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity, both for individuals and for companies, to reimagine where they live, where they work, and who they do that with. And I'm excited to be in Baltimore. Baltimore is a city that wraps its arms around you and holds on tight. It's got a wonderful food scene, a wonderful sort of startup community and universities. I was blown away at the number of really high quality universities are right here in Baltimore City. And so there's just a lot to love about Baltimore. But as you mentioned, the pandemic sort of resets things and gives you the opportunity to reinvent yourself and the city you live in to what you want it to be. And there's a lot of us really charging forward to build Baltimore into the city that we know and love.
Isn't there a spot called Fells Point?
Fells Point, you got Bolton Hill, you've got Towson, there's Baltimore is a city of neighborhoods, and wonderful neighborhoods, historic neighborhoods. It's got its challenges for sure, but the positives and the direction that we're heading far outweigh those challenges. And so it's just a beautiful city to live in.
Mm. So as you've been through this journey in creating UpSurge, and you have the partnership with Techstars as well, which is very exciting. You have the new facility that you created, which is right by the train station, I understand, and extremely, very exciting times for you. As you've gone through this journey, I mean, what have you learned?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll take this opportunity to even mention a lot of our supporters, people who were the brain trust and the impetus for UpSurge, Brown Advisory, Johns Hopkins, Mike Hankin and Christy Weiskell are our two co-chairs. This is really their vision on how we generate or push Baltimore into the top tier of tech cities. We've gotten support from Able Foundation, Steve Bashotti and his team at Point Field Partners, Green Spring Associates, Whiting Turner, Towson. There is just a really, really wonderful cross-section of really anchor institutions and leaders within the Baltimore tech community that want to see this effort succeed. And what I've learned is, we have a tremendous wealth of leadership and support throughout the city. There has been a desire to pull all of that energy into sort of one center of gravity and move the needle forward together. So I've learned that there are a number of really well-intentioned, high networked and totally engaged leaders in Baltimore that really want to see this effort succeed. I've also learned, when we came out sort of on a listening tour, we talked to every organization that was out there, community organizations, faith-based organizations, incubators and accelerators, founders, early stage and late, investors across the ecosystem, to socialize this vision and this movement. And what I've learned is that everyone, to a man, woman, really wants to see this effort succeed and is willing to engage in some way, whatever their capacity might be. So the partnership with Techstars is one part of our strategy, and we're thrilled to be partnered with them for the first of its kind global Equitech accelerator. We're really excited in partnership with Stanley Black & Decker to bring their accelerator with Techstars here, which will be kicking off next month, and also operating out of the Railway Express building, which is what you mentioned, right across from the train station. So we're just excited. I mean, there's just been a lot of energy and a lot of progress in a short period of time. That only serves to sort of set us up on a foundation of really moving the needle and going deep in some of these lanes that we've been in. And so we're just excited to continue socializing the vision, both locally and across the country, and really moving the needle in some of the projects and pilots that we're working on.
You know, that I love the way you speak. One center of gravity.
Yeah.
You mentioned, and I, you know, you look at ecosystems and I like your term better, communities. An ecosystem is more like a siloed set of things, right? Communities more, as we discussed, galvanized, and having one center of gravity. Very, very difficult to do. So I commend you on that.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting. Some of the reading that I've done over the course of the last year to sort of inform our activities and some of the decisions that we've made, and really leaned into one book in particular, The Startup Community Way by Brad Feld, who's one of the founders of Techstars. He often talks about not falling into the trap of measuring the parts of an ecosystem, but leaning into the connectivity between those parts. And so that's really where, you know, community building and culture shifting became such an important anchor to the work that we're doing. And this is a 10-year vision. This is not something that we intend to be able to accomplish in a year or two. There has to be sustained effort over the course by a lot of people over the course of a long period of time. So we have to build sort of a coalition of willing, able, and committed individuals that really want to lean into this work and this effort. So it is that connectivity between those parts that really starts to galvanize and create that center of gravity. It's not one organization, it's not one institution. It has to be sort of a shared vision and mission, and then everybody sort of moving together in tandem.
You use the term leaning into a lot.
Yeah.
And I love it. How do you, if someone didn't really understand what leaning into means, how would you describe it?
You know, just having the intestinal fortitude, right? The guts to recognize, you know, recognize what is working, and push harder there. You know, sometimes we get in our heads like, this is the way we should do it, or I really think we should be doing that. And that can be a little bit misleading, because if you just have a personal conviction for something, sometimes you can spin the wheel and do things that aren't productive. I've done that in my own personal life, in my professional life. But as you gain more experience in sort of an intuition for what is working well, you can really recognize, you know, that these are the activities and the behaviors that we should really be fostering and nurturing. These are the ones that we shouldn't. And so it requires open conversation. It requires transparency. It requires a shared belief and vision for a large group of, or even small groups of people, to be open and transparent in communicating that. But then there has to be a consensus that these are the activities and things that we should be focusing on and leaning into now. These are the things that it might not be the right timing for, or the ecosystem might not be ready for. That doesn't make them bad ideas. It just means that it's not the right time. So you have to know where to prioritize and really push when the push together, right? When it's necessary to do so.
I always talk about order of operations.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, you really have to think about what is the right timing for something. Might be a fantastic idea, but the timing is extremely important. And I think
Definitely.
the other component that you referenced is, you're talking about when you join forces and you combine efforts and you change culture, you do community building, you're really making a bigger pie. So it might be a smaller slice, but the pie is much larger. And rather than thinking that the pie is always this big, you make it that big, then you have a lot more to choose from.
Yeah, an attitude of abundance. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I love that analogy of the bigger pie. I've often used the analogy that, you know, we're not trying to take anybody's pie. We're trying to teach everybody how to make pies and just.
Oh my gosh, that's the best thing ever. That is the best.
You can have your whole own entire pie, right? Like you don't have to take a slice at all. Let's all learn how to make pies. And you can bring me a pie, I can bring you a pie, we can all have pie. But yeah, that we have to have more, you know, across society, really, more of an abundance mentality. When you win, I win, we win, right?
I'm bringing lava cake, okay?
Love those too. Love those too.
I can't eat any of it, but the thing is, I get my greatest pleasure by watching other people eat it. So
that's another important thing, right? If you contribute to someone else's success, that gives you a really great feeling and sense of accomplishment. So I think both things are needed, right? We need to support one another, celebrate each other's wins, and be a factor in each other's wins as well.
All right. Well, we're getting down to the wire here. So, do you have any advice you would give to entrepreneurs? That, you know, if there are 3 things you're going to say to an entrepreneur that, you know, entrepreneurship is very hard. You know, we both know it. When I started my company, everybody said, "Are you crazy?" You know, because they thought the idea was a bad idea, which is fine with me. You know, B, you know, I'm leaving corporate America where I had led innovation strategy for the top consulting firms in the world, but you know, I didn't know my neighbors because I was traveled for 18 years straight. You know, I'm getting a life, but it's like if I had told myself in you know, 10 years ago, if I told myself 10 years ago that I'd be doing what I'm doing now, I would be like, I wouldn't believe myself. You know? Like, could reverse time and tell myself that. Because it, you know, I was launched and led IBM's innovation strategy practice globally, so it's like in 3 countries a week. But of course, it's much more fulfilling to, you know, making an impact in the world. And I wonder what you would say to entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I'd really say 3 things. 1, don't be afraid to fail. You know, entrepreneurship is hard. Not everybody is going to love your ideas, but your ideas are valid. They matter. So don't be afraid to fail. Go out there and put your ideas into practice. Build teams around them that are passionate about building with you, not for you, but with you. And don't be afraid to fail, because you're going to learn something no matter what. It's going to teach you something that you need to know for the next idea and the next thing that you build. The second thing I'll say is, you know, I'm going to use lean into again, really lean into the people who are supporting you, not just as an entrepreneur, but as a person. It's important to have boundaries. It's important to have a life outside of what you're doing. Entrepreneurship can be very sort of obsessive, right? You have this problem that you're trying to fix, this thing that you're trying to build, but you need to have friendships, you need to have family, and you need to have opportunities to disconnect and engage with the rest of the world outside of the passion and the project that you're working on. And the third thing would be just don't quit. You know, society has a way of beating people down or telling people their ideas don't matter or telling them that they don't matter. You do, so don't quit. Keep at it. Join a team if you're not ready to start your own team. Learn from other people who have done it before. Mentorship, knowledge sharing, those things are all very important. You don't know what you don't know, and no one's expected to know everything, right? So lean into other people and their talents. Really grow your set of skills and talents, and you'll be a part of something beautiful, whether you're the founder or the CTO or, you know, the tech that's just getting started into the tech industry. So yeah, you know, don't be afraid to fail. let people support you, and don't quit.
Well, Kory, you have given us some many words of wisdom today. And on your don't quit item, you know, openness, like being open to feedback, and it's one of the things we look for in all of our entrepreneurs is the openness score. We actually do a food intelligence test for our entrepreneurs, and the openness score is like one of the most important things to learn from others. So, if I may, I will try to summarize a few of your glorious points that you mentioned. Well, so part of what you need to do to try to galvanize a community is culture shifting, meaning thinking about the attitude of abundance, contributing to others' success, celebrating other people's wins. And don't forget that the Tuesdays on at Oma Cocina, 6 to 8 p.m. And a couple other things, of course, the 3 major items that you mentioned. Don't be afraid to fail. Lean into other people who support you and don't quit. And of course, there are many other fantastic tidbits of, not just tidbits, wisdom elements that you have mentioned today, Kory. So I'm very grateful for your time. And I'll mention also that 1:30 Eastern time for our demo day, the Center for Advancing Innovation. We're going to be featuring a couple of companies also from Ignite Social Impact platform. And on Ignite Social Impact, companies can raise up to $5 million. So if you're interested in raising money, it's a good platform to look at. And anything else, Kory, that you want to mention there?
No, it's just a pleasure to be with you, and you know, I look forward to hearing how successful your demo day goes. We also will have a demo day for our Techstars Equitech Accelerator, February 23rd. So be on the lookout for that.
Oh, okay. I'm coming to that, right?
Yes, yes, you are invited, and we would love for people to plug in either virtually if we're live streaming, which I'm sure that we will be. But there's just a lot of exciting activities happening in Baltimore. So get on the Baltimore.tech, Be More Tech Connect, find some events, and get plugged in to this community because we want you here.
Is there anything else, like any other URLs that you want to provide, or
if you want to learn more about UpSurge, you can go to UpSurgeBaltimore.com. Look at, sign up for our newsletter. It's a great sort of compilation of things happening in and around the Baltimore tech community. Yeah, just excited.
The UpSurge newsletter is the bomb. It is the bomb. It is like fantastic.
That's great.
No, it's really fantastic. I mean, I don't know how much you're paying someone to do that, but it is really awesome. So congratulations on that many fronts, Kory.
Thank you. And thanks for having me. This was great.
It's my sincere pleasure and honor. So have a good day. Take care.
Thanks, Rosemary.